大家好，大家好，歡迎嚟到9月7號嘅晚上7點鐘嘅 London Wednesday 嘅直播節目啊！我係你嘅主持人Antonio Lee，Britain Connect 首席顧問。咁今日我哋好歡迎請到Life Residential 嘅一個好朋友James Henry。Hello James，nice to meet you to show up in our webinar today. Thank you very much.
Hi Anthony, thanks for having me.
Okay, very good. Okay， 今日第一部分咧，其實就會都係我為大家咧去做翻一個市場嘅一個 update。咁就同上次一樣啦，我大概會講講而家有啲咩新嘅英國本地嘅一個資訊啦，同埋少少分享啦。咁第二部分就今日James 會為大家帶來一個好精彩嘅一個 presentation， 我睇過個 PPT deck， 非常之 informative， 就係關於究竟一個 landlord 喺倫敦點樣將自己嘅租金去拉高。因為我成日都講啦，一個 buy to let 嘅 investor 咧，如果你租金唔升嘅話咧，你層樓要升嘅話咧都比較難嘅，因為你下家同你買嗰個人咧都係睇住 investment 睇住 rental yield 嘅啫，所以其實係有啲 tactics 咧James 會同大家分享嘅。咁第二部分就會同佢好多交流啦。咁第一部分我先同大家講翻嗰個市場有咩最新嘅情況先。OK， 咁就比較熱門嘅新聞啦，就係卓偉斯呢個官方譯名就贏咗辛偉誠，就做呢個保守黨嘅黨魁，亦都係新任嘅首相。咁其實大家都等咗好耐啦，成個市場等成2個月。Boris Johnson 都好唔想坐個位，間租坐多2個月，咁就終於揭盅咗啦。咁其實由Liz 上台到而家，琴日喺唐寧街10號門口第一個演講，就帶出幾個好大嘅問題。第一個就真係個能源問題啦。咁點解會講？其實同個樓價有咩關係咧？其實同個匯價關係。咁其實而家Liz 第一個要處理嘅當務之急咧，其實就係而家嗰個能源嚟緊冬天嗰個情況。咁其實喺歐盟、德國佢哋已經有自己嘅解決辦法，因為佢哋一路有首相啦。咁 Boris Johnson 喺2個禮拜之前都成日都講話，喂，大家等等啦，有方法解決㗎啦。咁其實方法一定喺黨內有共識㗎啦，即係成個保守黨裏邊都有共識點樣處理呢件事。咁不就係留翻俾卓偉斯去同大家去講。咁其實見到情況就係話，成個 energy bill 而家其實一個家庭大概2000磅左右。咁其實我覺得2000到3000磅左右，視乎你喺倫敦或者歐西倫敦啦。咁嚟緊可能都會升到去5000磅到6000磅一年。咁所以其實點樣去處理呢個問題嘅話，其實個問題衍生到整個英國居民嘅收入。如果佢嗰個能源嗰個 energy bill 升咁多嘅話咧，會影響到個 disposable income 即係可以用嘅收入會大幅降低，令到影響整個消費。咁只要消費有問題嘅話咧，就令到整個經濟出現問題啦。咁你所以見到其實本身呢件事上一次出現就係 COVID 嘅開始。COVID 開始嘅時候，其實英國都面對同樣問題，就係啲人突然間可能冇工返，可能冇收入，可能失業，咁令到大家個消費會即刻停晒。咁或者就會更加有錢嘅就慳啲使，冇錢就唔知就靠政府去支撐啦。咁所以而家見到 energy bill 亦都會好影響到整個英國居民家庭收入嘅情況。所以卓偉斯第一件事就話，大概佢哋會想拎緊100個 billion， 即係講緊1000億英鎊嘅一個計劃，去幫助呢啲居民咧去解決降低嗰個 energy bill， 係講緊為期2年。即係其實講咗2年時間，其實呢有2個重點，大家聽聽嘅。第一個市場反應就係話，究竟呢張單邊個買咧？嗱，其實上一次 COVID 嗰陣時都有咁類似情況，就係話政府去幫手出人工俾啲公司僱主，叫佢唔好炒人，係咪？咁呢個其實都令到政府嗰個 government lendings 咧，個借款咧都係上升咗嘅，為咗 COVID 呢件事。咁今次即係嗰件事，即係一波未平，一波又起啦。究竟而家呢個政府亦都係要揞多講100個 billion 1000億英鎊，去令到個居民嗰個嚟緊2年個 energy bill 咧係唔使加。咁第一個問題就係話邊個埋單？成個市場喺度諗緊，究竟用咩方法去令到佢呢個100個 billion 點樣去 gap 咧？去補充咧？呢個就而家個市場上比較多人去等緊政府去解釋呢件事。咁其實當然你見到整個天然氣價格升咁犀利嘅話咧，其實都有得益者嘅。咁 BP 英國最大嘅石油公司，咁咧喺第一季度都講緊賺咗 double， 講緊一個季度賺咗個5 50億英鎊。咁其實亦都有英國嘅工黨啦，或者比較左派嘅一啲議員啦，都有提過話，應唔應該去收個叫 Energy Windfall Tax？ 咁即係話我哋係咪要翻，既然佢砸錢打咁犀利嘅話，我哋咪要佢嘔翻啲錢出嚟咧？咁呢個就亦都係喺英國裏邊亦都有一個大家嘅討論啦。咁其實以 Boris Johnson 為首，同而家卓慧思咧，佢哋都堅持呢個自由經濟嘅原則，嗰個定律就係唔可以去徵收呢啲稅。所以其實喺卓慧思琴日嘅演講裏邊咧，都講咗話，佢唔會考慮 revisit 翻嗰個 windfall tax， 即係話佢唔會去搞啲能源公司。咁所以頭先講個問題啦，100個 billion 英鎊嘅帳單，亦都唔 compensate by 一個 energy windfall tax， 咁亦都講緊話要減呢個企業所得稅，咁令到個經濟個活動更加好。咁其實幾件情況下邊咧，聽落咧都係使錢嘅，但係呢個使錢亦都未去到話去用直升機派錢嘅情況。所以大家都覺得其實呢個新首相咧都對個經濟，雖然佢唔係經濟出身啊，咁但係佢都會偏向係用嗰個好多 fiscal policy 去令到個刺激翻嘅經濟，令到減稅，令到個 disposable income 每個家庭收入咧唔好大跌情況下邊，希望佢繼續消費，去支撐翻整個個 GDP 嘅。咁當然大家都會講話，究竟即係呢個如果我唔去呢個揾人埋單嘅話咧，咁唯一嘅方法就係你會英國政府繼續去發債。繼續發債去支撐埋呢100億或者超過100億英鎊嘅一個 shortfall， 咁所以嚟緊喺而家呢個情勢下邊咧，其實大家都會有啲討論嘅。究竟我哋應該揾辛偉誠做首相啦，定揾卓慧思都已經塵埃落定啦。但係佢兩個代表咗連全兩個唔同嘅一個哲學嘅。辛偉誠都係會以保障翻整個居民多啲用啲手段，政府嘅干預，令到整個社會嘅財富重新分配。呢個就會係辛偉誠佢個理念啦。咁當然而家佢冇辦法去實行啦，因為佢唔係首相啦。咁而卓慧思亦都真係比較鷹派啲，就話我會大刀闊斧去使錢。咁喺外交政策上面咧，都係大刀闊斧比較鷹派，會同即係五眼聯盟啊，會同美國啊，會多啲一個聯繫啊，或者佢上任第一個電話就打俾烏克蘭嘅總統啊。咁其實呢件事究竟好定唔好咧？其實我哋都好難去定奪。但係身邊啲朋友佢咁點睇呢件事嘅話，其實而家大家我哋作為投資者也好，其實都要留意翻整個國際個形勢。我諗相信呢個都離開唔到嘅，因為始終個金融同嗰個政治都係有少少掛鈎。喺以往嗰個整個叫做 globalization 全球環球化嘅情況下邊咧，其實大家係享受好多低利息啊、印錢啊、資產價格急升啊，咁呢度會衍生好多由低資產變中資產啊、中資產變高資產啊、高資產變首富啊、全球首富啊，咁咪創造好多機會出嚟。咁其實反而喺而家個 globalization 已經開始唔好用瓦解呢個字啦，慢慢淡化情況下邊咧，其實當然大家你唔可以否認 globalization 呢件事開始慢慢淡化咗。大家各國都會睇翻自己嗰個財政情況啊，個合作係國與國合作係比以往係冇咁加深啊。咁其實呢啲其實都係會影響到你會大家翻返個老日子會係點咧？當大家少咗合作嘅情況下邊，即係每樣嘢都貴咗。咁每樣貴咗話咧，你會見到所有嘢都會貴咗，利息會高咗。其實發覺可能嚟緊全球利息高咧係一個新常態。而唔係話以往我哋仲要享受到一厘樓下0.1厘呢啲咁樣嘅，即係我哋用呢個 monetary policy 去令到整個經濟活動咧，我相信已經去到一個有機會係一個暫時嘅短暫嘅歷史。咁所以可能大家要開始去準備下自己點樣喺一個高利息下邊去自己去做好嗰個理財資產點樣配置。咁當然喺高息情況下邊嘅話咧，其實對投資者咧嗰個槓桿咧係會有影響嘅，因為你高息啊嘛，咁我唔會咁輕易去投資一啲資產。如果個利息 嗰個資金回報唔係咁 concrete 嘅情況下邊啦。咁所以即係大家都會覺得其實喺呢個咁樣新嘅 deglobalization 嘅大環境下邊咧，似乎真係高利息都係一個衍生出嚟嘅另外一個副產品。咁最後都睇翻呢個英鎊對美金啦。咁喺卓慧思宣佈咗之後，亦都係呢兩日公佈埋佢嘅即係燃眉之急，佢要做啲乜嘢嘅 priority 之後咧，個市場似乎都唔係有好大嘅反應。咁但係亦都係比早兩日嘅低位就大翻少少，琴晚就 1.15 左右。咁但係都距離即係舊年嗰個高位 1.4 都仲有好大距離，係近期嘅 1.25 呢啲阻力位都好大距離。咁但係嚟緊會點睇咧？因為個市場仲係睇緊頭先講啊，卓慧思嗰個政府究竟點樣去埋張單啊？即係你而家開張支票出嚟啦，我要減稅，我要1000億嘅能源補助津貼2年。嗱，其實2年呢個數字咧又好 magic 嘅。點解2年唔係1年？點解唔係3年？即係話其實英國政府嘅估算裏邊咧，嚟緊要個能源價格落翻嚟咧，都可能都要年幾2年。所以 that's why 佢哋而家做政策嗰陣時咧，都超前話要2年。所以嚟緊大家見到能源價格高企咧，都有機會係真係2年時間。所以可能唔知會唔會大家對大中市場嘅一啲理解點樣睇卓慧思釋放出嚟嘅信號啦。咁當然啦，卓慧思自己本身唔係一個財經出身嘅一個官員咁所以大家要注意佢唔同新圍城咁所以其實英鎊而家喺 1.15 嘅位咧都係吸引嘅。咁當然你話段段都係低，但其實你睇翻歐羅都跌咗 10%，year to day 英鎊跌咗15%，咁都11%啦，歐羅11%，咁隻yen 仲犀利，咁所以其實都喺翻嗰個美匯指數咁 DXY 咁高情況下邊咧，都係暫時都係其他貨幣都係撳住啦。咁所以嚟緊大家會見到就係話，究竟點樣去國與國之間嘅經濟點樣去跑翻出嚟？喺而家嘅新常態下邊咧，其實大家反而個匯價低咧，其實有可能都未必係壞事。咁作為國際投資者嘅話，匯價低嘅話，我買咗你資產嘅，你匯價低我就係唔開心咯。對啲未買嘅英鎊資產嘅人咧，匯價低亦都好吸引。咁所以其實都匯價低嘅話，都係對整個 GDP 都有幫助，就係佢可能入口價格會低翻或者其他佢對個資產吸引啲外來嘅人投資我相信對英國嘅資產係有吸引力嘅。咁所以大家拭目以待翻隻英鎊會唔會嚟緊會反彈翻少少啦？咁就或者真係會再插落去8個半，大家有人講話插落去8個半咁所以我哋暫時都真係都冇水晶球。咁但係見到琴日卓慧思出嚟講嘅兩件事咧，暫時都係見佢都係要當務之急處理呢，就係嗰個能源嗰個 energy bill 同埋嗰個減稅嗰兩大問題。咁所以我今日嘅一個好簡單嘅10分鐘嘅一個分享咧，就去到呢個段落啦。咁嚟緊第二個 part 咧，就會請James 同我哋去講一講翻究竟嗰個而家英國倫敦個租務市場會係點樣？咁最近咧，其實今日喺個 PPT 裏邊咧，James 都會分享翻咧，佢有一個現實嘅案例咧，就係見到佢嘅客戶喺呢兩個 quarters 個租金嗰個大幅轉變啊。咁所以呢個都值得大家去睇睇同分享。我個人就覺得好 convincing 啦。Okay, hello James. Yes. The first part I just have a market update on how the pound sterling trend and the new PM, what the policy should declare to the market and the market response so far. And for your part, I'm very happy to see today you will bring us how the London rental market overview. This is very interesting as we have lots of Hong Kong buyers or Asian Chinese buyers already in the landlord. They have puzzle in how to renew the tenancy this year. Since there's a lot of different message in the market, there's some global firm, they say 15% growth is reasonable, and some say 10% is reasonable. And some of my clients telling me 30% year-on-year growth is reasonable.
Yeah.
So I leave it to you. You have lots of good
Yeah.
food showing to us today. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, I think just to touch on that, in terms of the London market, I think 10, 15, 30%, whatever it is, it depends on, just to sort of caveat that, it does depend on location you're in.
Yep.
We're going to touch on that today. So a little brief introduction for myself. My name is James. I've been working at Life Residential for over 6 years now. Areas are sort of specialised in is Central London and Nine Elms. So I manage our Nine Elms office, and by there we do cover those locations. So just quickly on Life Residential, so you know who we are. We're an estate agency managing over 4,500 flats across London and Birmingham.
Yeah, actually, I know you in 16.
Yeah,
so we are old friends. Yeah,
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So it's gone back a long way. So yeah, and now here we are sat on a webinar together. So yeah, there you go. So look, I think just with regards to the presentation, just to introduce that, I'll just be discussing how the market's performed over the last 12 months or so, and the recovery from the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, and looking ahead as to what's to come. The market has been, I mean, it's, as you'll see from the figures I'm about to show, it's been a bit of a crazy market over the last sort of year or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll be discussing that. Now, as Antonio was saying before, the market has had a massive upturn in rental prices in certain locations, particularly. So what's driving that now? There's a couple of key reasons. I mean, ultimately, economically, it's because actually the supply has been taken out of the market, and there's mass demand again now. So just to paint the picture, over the last well, when COVID first hit and everyone started moving out of London, we had a mass exodus of tenants. So this is going back say 2 and a bit years now, and part of those were service department operators. So they would typically rent out a high proportion of flats from landlords and from agents.
They take a lot of units, but are these all existing operator or newcomer?
Yeah. So what we found is, well, first of all, when it went back to COVID, because these businesses are relying on international travel, they obviously couldn't then fulfill their tenancies and ended up having to give back. You know, I mean, just from our experience at Life Residential, they gave us back hundreds and hundreds of properties, and I know from speaking to other agents, it was the same across the network, and that caused a huge mountain of supply, really, because there was all these properties coming back to market at the same time and no one to rent them. Anyway, you fast forward 2 years or so, we're now seeing these service department operators back in the market, and the ones that have managed to stay.
Yeah, but most of the cases, they are willing to pay higher prices when compared to those individual tenants.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So typically, just in case you're not familiar, this sort of tenant would be a corporate lease where then the company would then rent out the property on like a 3-month basis or something along those lines. It would normally be a long-term tenancy, say 3 years, and they tend to pay above market rate.
So this is those service department operators, they are dealing with the MNC, the large corporations, and not the Airbnb, not such kind of
not so much. Not so much. Again, I mean, just a bit of advice, if you are interested in that kind of tenancy, you do have to be very careful, as with any tenant who you put into the property, because there's pitfalls to having those types of tenancies. So you have to make sure you're dealing with a reputable company if you're going to do that. But we have started seeing them now come back into the market, which has increased the demand, really. If landlords are interested in those types of tenancies. To be honest, at the moment, some landlords, well, it's obviously individual preference, but we're starting. I mean, personally, we're starting to deal with them again a little bit, and I think, I think some agencies are as well. So that's one reason. Another reason, which is probably quite obvious, I guess, but during COVID, everyone was working from home, so a lot of finance professionals or just professionals in general would be working from home 5 days a week. Then from about July, August time last year, when the UK lifted their COVID restrictions, then you started to see the market really improve, and with that, I mean, I know from my brother, for example, works in finance, and he was made to go back to office at least 3 days a week.
At least 3 days, yes, this current, at least 3 days. Yeah.
Exactly. So by that happening, it then meant all the people that had moved out of London to work from home the previous year, and then had to take accommodation back in London, and actually with the timing, because it was about July, August time last year.
Yes.
At the same time,
is this factors being digested since most of them coming back in the last October?
Yeah.
To the Q1 this year.
Yeah, that's right. So I think what essentially happened was that was a similar sort of time to the universities also confirming they would be open again for study.
Yes.
In the 2021-22 academic year.
Yeah.
And just to come on to the final point, we saw rental prices drop significantly across London, for various reasons, during the pandemic, and then bounce back even higher after that. And another reason for that was a mass influx of the international students coming back into the market.
Is it most Asian or just global, international?
It's a mixed demographic, to be honest with you. And I think, I mean, certainly, I remember when I was a student at university, and I wouldn't have wanted to do it from my bedroom at home. So I think a lot of tenants delayed their studies for a year, and then when they could come to London, they've all come to London. And,
is this the myth that the Chinese student could pay good price always?
I mean, look, I think not necessarily just them. I think the market has dictated the price essentially, and with everyone coming back at one go, what that's then happened is, I mean, there was only a certain supply of property at that time. All the prices got pushed up, and ever since then, the demand has outstripped the supply across London in general, in the rental market, and that ultimately that's the main reason we've seen such a
in the last few months we experienced from our clients saying that there's a lot of student tenants in the market. Now they are willing to pay very good price. They can pay 6 months in advance. This is very good, one of the very good tenant selections among their choices.
That's right. I think, I mean, some landlords, I mean, look, ultimately each owner of a property is different. Like Antonio said, that the student tenants will often pay in advance, and then because of that, it does make them relatively low risk tenancies, because it's very important to get the right tenant, not just about the price, and ultimately they tend to be relatively low risk tenancies. So look, just coming on to the next slide then. This is the office that I manage for Life Residential. Like I say, we cover 9 homes in central London. This is an overview of the rent prices from August 21 to August 22. Now, as you can see, there are some huge increases on that. And I think just to touch on studios in particular, the studios were I would say most affected during the COVID pandemic, because it was a simple case of people working from home. No one wanted to rent a studio. Fast forward 12 months or so, and you've got a lot of people needing accommodation in London, and ultimately the studio price has bounced back significantly. The increase in, this is on new tenancies, I should say. So this is an increase on new tenancies agreed from August 21 to August 22. So it just shows a significant increase there. I think
其實大家可以睇翻呢個數據咧，其實 studio 咧佢 year on year 差唔多成39% 嘅升幅咧，其實都好誇張嘅。你由1100一個月升到差唔多1600一個月，其實個市場係真係俾得到價。咁而一房嘅話咧，都差唔多成32% 嘅升幅。咁所以其實即係個 market 時候都仲要話加15% 咧，其實係我哋 experience 我哋坐喺倫敦嘅人咧，係覺得係唔止加15% 嘅，因為我哋好多客戶都話佢好多途徑 佢嘅 existing 嘅代理同佢講話，而家係加咗15% 租嘅啫。咁所以其實呢個就係其中一個James 今日嘅分享就係話，喂 Line M 同 Central London 係講緊一房都有30%嘅 year on year， 呢個似乎係一個佢哋嘅實際數據嚟，佢哋都唔係一間細行嚟，佢間中型行嚟。OK，I'm just sharing how it's amazing the year on year growth for one bed can achieve 32% is very amazing for the last 10 years.
Yeah. And I think what we should caveat that by saying actually the prices in central London and Nine Elms, they did drop significantly the year before, during the pandemic, because people didn't need to be in central London and pay the very, very high prices. Also, this location is typically a location of very high supply, particularly in the Nine Elms and Battersea area. So just coming on to the next slide, and we're going to talk about two specific locations today, and obviously just touch on the first. The second is Canary Wharf. Now, this is another area of huge supply of property, but actually, when you look at these figures year on year, the rental prices have bounced back considerably there. And I know we touched on it before, particularly in this location, a lot of professional tenants and a lot of there's obviously a lot of banks and a lot of finance professionals now having to be back in the office. Typically, finance professionals will work long hours, and they'll need a property close to their work. And I think that is ultimately one of the main reasons why the prices in Canary Wharf have bounced back.
其實大家睇翻呢個James 啲數據啦，呢個係 Canary Wharf 嘅分行嘅一啲數據啦。其實如果即係我都今日同大家一齊分享嘅啫，一齊睇翻數據。其實睇到真係一房同三房嗰個租金升幅咧係好零舍多嘅喎，一房有成24% 升幅，三房有成30%升幅，反而 studio 同兩房唔喐，冇咁喐，即係你話即係叫跑輸啦。咁所以其實呢都係一個俾大家嚟緊喺24裏邊，如果大家要揀新貨要買嗰陣時咧，其實可能一房同三房會有個特別嘅因素。Hello, James. Can you share with us why one bedder and three bedder can overachieve the year-on-year increase when compared to studio and two bedders?
Yeah, I mean, I think with regards to three bedders, there's probably certainly with three bedroom properties there's less supply. So there's not as many investors that buy three bedroom flats.
Yes.
For the yield's not quite as good. So really it's down to that. And actually, if you're say three sharers sharing at £3,000 a month, that's £1,000 each. That's still cheaper than having a one bedroom flat for yourself. So you could probably argue that that's a reason there. But yeah, the increases for studios not quite as great, I guess, really there with regards to that.
So maybe for E14, one bedder is a good choice comparably. Yeah, for investment back to that basis.
Yeah, I'd say so. So okay, so we're touching it just briefly, in terms of the one of the main reasons for such a great shift in the rental market, and that simply is based because it sounds supply issues across the network. I speak to agents quite regularly in some of the larger corporations, and they're telling me how they are struggling for property. And actually, as we are now on the 7th of September, what you'll find is that a lot of the properties now have been rented for the summertime, and agents are looking around for new business, and obviously tenants are still looking. So this is just a few figures that we pulled from Life Residential. In August 2021, we had 167 vacant properties across our 8-branch network, which is quite a considerable amount of properties actually. Without tenants, you fast forward 1 year, and that's down to just 27 units vacant. And I would have thought some of those will be new landlords rather than tenancies that are finished, and we haven't managed to get them occupied purely because the market is so strong. So that's a major reason why prices are increasing.
其實大家都有睇到嘅，真係咧呢個就解釋翻點解會個租金，即係佢哋公司可以幫啲業主 achieve 到30% 頭先啲數據啊，20-30% 嗰個增幅就因為睇翻佢公司嘅數據，舊年8月啦，21年咧，佢哋都有167個業主放盤嘅。咁去到今年8月咧，剩翻27間放盤，即係話其實大部分嘅貨都走晒。其實都等同於翻我哋自己成日都望住 Rightmove 嗰啲租盤，因為其實我哋一邊揾樓咧，一邊睇住個租盤嘅，因為其實因為個租金會令到我哋嘅租回報決定投唔投資嗰個物業嘅，所以其實成日我都會望住嗰個區嘅 Rightmove 啲盤多唔多租盤抌出嚟嘅話係咩價錢抌出嚟，咁所以其實見到話其實得27個盤，成間公司得27個盤，即係等於即係冇盤，即係乜盤都租晒，所以 that's why 其實啲租客求盤心切。尤其是8月、9月呢啲本身都係高峰旺季，啲學生翻嚟啊，或者啲本地人都中意呢啲時間搬屋嘅，即係聖誕前最好似搬屋就係呢啲大遷徙，大家搬屋我為學校啊，whatever搬嚟搬去啊，就係呢啲即係8月、9月、10月啊，8月、9月 mainly 啦，7、8、9月啦，所以見到其實Savills 就話自己過去啲10個月 Prime Central London 嘅客嘅租金升13%，咁當然 Savills 本身嗰個基數大啦，係咪先？咁 Live 就話自己有大概20-30嘅升幅啦，佢哋幫啲客揾到啲咁當然頭先阿 James 都講過嘅，舊年基數低，咁但係全世界其他 agent 大家基數低嘅，係咪先？咁所以都見到其實property agents 喺嗰個同業主關係裏邊都可以去幫大家爭取啲好啲嘅租金翻嚟嘅。Instead 就係即係平抌，我成日都話，即係我哋都係咁多年業主喺倫敦，有時都要揀 letting agents，因為有啲 letting agents 都會貪方便貪快，有時啲業主喺海外都唔知情況下邊就15% 啦咁樣。但係如果真係可以有啲比較 polite 啲、細心啲嘅 letting agents 咧，其實會幫啲客戶走多一步咧，揾條好啲嘅租金咧。其實有啲 letting agent 都做得比較細心。
Okay. And then this is just sorry, just to touch back on the previous slide, if you wouldn't mind.
Okay.
Yeah, just another thing I should raise, just about the increase in renewals of tenancies. So 15% increase year on year with tenants renewing July and August this year versus July and August last year. Again, that would lead to supply. Well, that would lead to supply issues moving forward if that continues. Get to the next one for that. And this is just an example of the amount of Rightmove specific inquiries that we've received in August 2022 across our network. Over 17,000 inquiries, which just to put it into context, that's an incredible amount of inquiries. Or you know,
E14 is a good place.
Yeah,
there's nearly 3,000 inquiries in August. Yeah,
that's right. So that I should just say that's just Rightmove inquiries. That doesn't account for our website or Zoopla or other channels, which we advertise on. So it's a significant amount of people looking for properties across our network, and that will be the same across all agents at this time of the year in particular. And look, I'll touch on it in a second, but the time of the year is also very important when it comes to the market and it comes to achieving those high prices. Which we'll come on to in a second.
Yeah.
So again, just to slide on who is renting these apartments. This is who we are seeing, and I spoke about it before. Lots of students, lots of professionals back in the market, and some service departments now operating again.
Is student tenant a good choice in your eyes?
I think there's pros and cons to both. So with a student, you have quite low risk when it comes to payment up front. The
student tenant will pay at least 6 months to 12 months, depends on the situation.
That's right. So most, unless they have a guarantor, most agents or landlords will request at least 6 months in advance.
Yeah.
The only thing with student tenant is you're less likely to have a long-term tenancy, because ultimately they may be coming for a master's, they may be coming for their undergrad and stay 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Whereas if you get a good professional tenant, either you can reference them a little bit more, so you can find out a bit about their background, perhaps, and obviously who they're working for, and they're likely to stay for longer if they're happy in a property. But I think, you know, it ultimately depends on the person, doesn't it? I mean, you've obviously had both.
Yes.
Which do you prefer?
Yes. 我嘅經驗其實留學生都係一個幾好嘅選擇。如果你要有業主放租，你業主放租嘅話，因為留學生嘅話，頭先阿 James 都講過話，佢哋一次過交6個月租，1年交2次。咁有啲就係佢 Year 1入嚟住到 Year 3走，有啲預讀埋 Master 先走，有啲有 case 住同你租3-4年。 咁當然學生客都有特色啦，有男仔女仔啦，就自己揀啦，即係冇性別歧視啊。咁女仔有時咧會間屋會乾淨啲，男仔就會舐啡啲。咁呢個同香港租客都一樣嘅啫。咁 professional tenants 咧其實都係啲大公司約啦，咁所以全部都有晒 credit reference 嘅。咁睇翻佢之前有冇話欠租啊，個 credit rating 唔好啊。咁其實嗰啲都係而家做 letting 都會同你做晒啲 search。咁至於 service apartment 嘅 operator 咧，真係要揀啦。咁我哋自己嘅經驗嘅話咧，因為佢都係類似二房東身份啦，咁所以有時二房東如果佢收唔到三房客錢嘅話咧，佢都會吃力嘅。咁所以 service apartment operator 咧，其實喺我哋自己投資班業主裏邊揀咧，首選都會係 professional 同 student 多啲，次選先係 service apartment operator。冇話佢哋唔好啊，但係你會 take 到一個 risk 就係話，當佢租唔出啲樓嗰陣時，佢可能會唔交租住。咁呢個有啲似翻就係話，想呢個
係呢個係邊個嚟啊？係咪我認呢個姐姐上過啊？好靚啊個兩字喎。
有啲似翻就係話有啲似翻就話，即係等於佢攞咗層樓，佢唔交租，咁可能你會好煩。咁尤其是 COVID 嗰時都開始裏邊咧，有都碰到呢啲問題嘅。咁所以即係我自己個人意見啦，即係如果有咧首選情況下邊，都係揀翻 professional tenant 同埋學生客咧，就會容易睇啲，係啦。咁當然你如果去到物業好多嘅話，你就都比較難揀嘅話，可能 service apartment 嘅 operator 就要揀大嗰啲啦。We have just share our choices preference on student and professional tenants when compared to service apartment operators. Even though during the hard time, some service apartment operators they are also in liquidity tight. They have some difficulty in paying the rent.
Of course,
so student and professional tenants is more easy to manage for the international landlord.
I think you're right. Really, what you said there. Yeah, definitely. Especially if you're taking money up front. There is obviously insurance products that you can get for rental property, which we always advise. Can't insure the service apartments though, but you can insure the professional tenants in products that we use anyway. Okay, so just this slide then. Sorry. This is just an overview of a landlord's portfolio over the past year or so. We actually don't manage all of them, but we manage the top 3 properties here, and then the other 2 with a different agency. But this is just another sort of example of where the rents were in 2021 versus where the rents are now in 2022. And yeah, look, the figures sort of speak for themselves. Don't really need to sort of touch on those too much, and it just shows the huge increase. Obviously, rents decreased significantly in 2021, so we shouldn't get away from that. But yeah, the bounce back here in 2022 has been significant. And look, I think I mentioned it briefly before. Timing the market from a rental perspective is very, very important. So this portfolio, well, these properties here, there's one in E16, and the rest are relatively central. One in north, I guess, but the rest are all relatively central. And you do tend to find, as an investor, the summer months of July, August, and September typically the best and the strongest. And then from October time, the market does, not in every location, but certainly we do feel it during July, August, September, a big spike in demand. And the reason for that is, as well as the professional tenants, like we touched on before, you've got the students as well looking to rent. So even if you didn't want a student as a tenant, by them being in the market at that time, it creates urgency for other tenants, and other tenants feel that demand in the market.
Yes, James. The first 3 are managed by your company. And the landlord have the property hand to you in August, September. And that's why it's the peak season for hitting the best rental flow. It's really the case of August, September, October is the best season for price for the whole year. Is it the truth?
I would say so. Yeah, I think it's. I think if you speak to most agents in Central London, they'll tell you the same thing. And actually, the experienced landlords tend to line up their properties to make sure they come available during these periods each year. I think once you get past October, you have to be careful that you don't miss that window of opportunity. So if it's a bit later in October, sometimes you can miss the boat almost, and then in a typical year, so pre-COVID, I would say, because since then it's been a crazy market for one reason or another. Then in a typical year, you tend to find that the market softens a little bit during the winter time, specifically for central London, and that's what I'm talking about. Other locations, not as much. You don't have to be as worried about it, but particularly in the centre of London, speaking from a live residential perspective, we've got 3 offices in sort of central, and those 3 offices are far busier now than we will be in November time.
OK 嗱，其實我都想補充翻呢個 case， 呢個 case 係我哋公司一個實際客戶嚟嘅。咁呢個客戶都其實長時間都喺倫敦有投資，同佢啲物業咧都係Zone 1、Zone 2、Zone 3。咁佢都係交咗啲物業俾啲國際大行做，因為佢都好相信國際大行好多年。咁但係喺嗰個 rental 嘅 delivery 方面咧，always 都 hit 唔到一個好令佢好滿意嘅。咁所以我哋喺3、4、5月嗰時同佢傾過偈。咁就喂，咁其實不如有冇機會？咁啱先我哋又同阿 James 公司都係比較友好，話不如你試下一啲新嘅 boutique 啲嘅 letting agency 啦，佢哋都中大型行喺倫敦，咁佢哋比較 boutique 啲幫你去睇個 case。咁所以咁亦都佢哋俾咗一個好好嘅建議，我嘅客戶就話：喂，其實你睇翻其實整年裏邊最容易 hit 到靚租金就係8月、9月同10月。過到10月就係蘇州過後冇艇搭，咁所以8、9、10月就係最容易 hit 到靚租金。咁個業主亦都喺5、6月開始 call back 翻個物業翻嚟，咁就頭3個咧佢 call back 翻嚟嘅，佢 call 咗3個物業翻嚟，就 serve 個 Section 21，就同佢講話係啦，我需要攞翻個物業啦。咁因為按而家個租務條例下邊咧，個業主係可以收翻層樓，咁所以佢喺8月就收翻層樓翻嚟，咁跟住就交咗俾 Live Residential 阿 James 去處理。咁佢 hit 到就係 altitude 個 E1 嘅 one bedroom， 佢由2000磅去到2700磅，有31% 嘅 growth。Central St Giles 呢啲一房由2000去到2700磅 ，hit 到個35% 嘅 growth。而聖登臣呢啲一房嘅 Zone 1由2300磅去到3100磅，去到36% 嘅 growth。呢3個都係非常之亮麗嘅數字。我諗其實數字比任何嘢更加實際。咁第4、5個物業咧，就係我了解啦，就係佢係嘗試去serve notice 之後，嗰個應該係 Venus House 嗰個喺 E16嘅一個物業，佢嘗試就 serve 咗個 notice 嗌業主帶個租客走，之後個租客好似係應承走嘅，但係頭尾唔夠1個禮拜咧就話翻嚟，你幾多錢肯租翻俾我啊？租翻俾嗰個租客啊？咁業主就開2400磅，咁嗰個租客就一口答應咗啦。即係喺第4個 case 咧 ，Venus House 咧，其實個租客係冇走過，原地加租。就提早 break 咗個 tenancy 就加佢租，就加咗37% 嘅租金。咁第5個 case 咧係一個北倫敦嘅 case 咧，佢就呢個好似係早少少，就係3月份嗰時做，都係透過 serve 個 Section 21叫個租客走，後尾大家 back and forth 就加咗2成半租。咁所以你見到其實如果喺3、4月傾 renew 嗰時咧，嗰個租金嘅升幅係23到25% 左右，都有呢個 rate， 都好過15。如果佢去到8、9月傾嘅話咧，係差唔多依家 year on year 就成3成到3成半嘅升幅嘅。I just shared the case with my client, the audience that how the landlord using the tactics of serving the Section 21 to call for the vacancy and then to hand to your community to do the letting again and hit a very good price. Even though for the 4th case, he just asked the tenant to out and eventually the tenants retain in the apartment and willing to pay a good price and early renew the tenancy. So just if the landlord can trust your words to have to grasp the opportunities for the August, September, and no later for October.
No later than start of October.
No later for the start of October. That's good. It's very key. Very key. 所以大家就一定要喺8、9月裏邊 make sure 就你要自己安排。其實你如果想 hit 到啲好租金，一定要自己去安排嗰個租約係 break 咗呢啲位，去揾啲好租客，就一定可以攞到全年最好嘅租金。
I think it's really important as well that the bit you said about the fourth property in Windlass House in Wharf. So the tenant there, they were initially going to move out, weren't agreeing to the renewal price, and then they've obviously looked around, seen that there's actually nothing better available, and then I've had to
or much more expensive than this one.
Exactly. So a lot, and we're seeing that in the renewals department. We're seeing a bit of a common trend with that as well, where tenants are perhaps giving notice, or landlords are not happy with it, with their renewal terms, and then eventually tenants are looking around and then having to renew because there's just simply not enough property available. And actually my next slide is about renewal. So if we come on to that, that would be great if we could just
所以我覺得有時啲業主咧，你作為業主咧，都係要企硬少少。即係嗱，我哋都代表兩邊㗎，係咪先？即係我覺得都係要企硬少少，就唔好咁容易就話，就即係佢哋通常都話，係啊，嗱，你丟吉一個禮拜咧就幾多錢，除翻52週咧，其實你就少咗幾多錢。其實大家要留意一樣嘢，因為你嘅租金如果低咗嘅話咧，將來你連約賣嗰陣時咧，你要嗌價都會低咗嘅，因為其實個租金會令你租金回報嘅話，人家會壓你價嘅。所以其實我哋以往都有個誤區就話，租咗就算啦。咁而家發覺，如果我淨係有時都會啱價都會賣貨嘅時候咧，發現條租金太低嘅話咧，其實會影響到你個叫價、二手叫價賣出嚟嗰時個叫價。咁所以大家都要唔好掉以輕心就話，我冇所謂啦，以為嗰兩樣嘢分開，其實都唔係，都有個掛鈎喺裏邊。
Yeah, so just sort of this comes on nicely to what I was just saying before about renewals. So there's just a slide here about some life residential renewal data. As you can hopefully see on your screen, the average term year on year has increased from 11.9 months to 14.5 months, which shows that tenants are staying for a longer period of time. Break clauses increased from 5.9 to 8.2 months. Landlords are demanding longer periods they're demanding longer periods from their tenants, because ultimately if tenants move out, there's costs for that, and they want to secure the tenancy for as long as possible. And yeah, it just meant that we can owners have been able to demand longer periods, really. The average rent change for our renewal data is 9.4%. Now you might be wondering why is the renewal price so much lower than the new tenancies agreed data that we were on our earlier slides. And I think ultimately when you are a buy-to-let landlord, the one of the biggest fears, you'll probably agree with me here, is a vacancy period, and owners just don't want a vacancy period. And along with that, there is some costs setting up tenancies for owners, such as inventory costs and a potential week or two gap. And if you have got a good settled tenant, who's paying close to market rate, I think a lot of owners take the view that actually it's better to keep them if they're settled than if they're going to stay for.
This is very paradox. To renew it or to break it, have a new tenant. It's a lot of gambling. Just have some vision on the market. If the market is very hot, it's in my opinion, it's deserved to have it break. And go for a new one. And if the market not good, just keep the tenant. I think it makes sense. It makes sense.
I think again, it comes down to an owner's preference, really. If you've got a hassle-free tenant who keeps the property very well, then you may think, rather than pushing for that 15% increase, I'll keep it at 10% increase.
I think it really depends on the landlord's own stand on how the rental market, how he needs the cash flow from the rental to mitigate the maybe the loan interest, whatsoever. It depends. There's two types of landlords I experienced also.
There's exactly. So ultimately, it comes down to preference. And I think there you can see that with our renewal data versus the new tenancies agreed data. I should also say this is across our whole branch network. And obviously the slide before on Canary Wharf and Central London and Nine Elms, those two offices have seen the largest bounce back in terms of rental increase.
所以其實大家見到你見頭先佢 hit 到30%嘅租金咧，會係8、9月做。咁如果去翻呢啲數據，頭先啱先 renew 嗰啲數據咧，佢話大概 10% 租金升咗。咁呢啲其實調翻轉頭就話，如果你唔喺呢啲月份做嘅話咧，個租金可能冇嗌得咁好。 咁所以其實個 tips 嗰個技術位就係話，你點樣將自己嗰啲樓喺8、9月度到期去傾，哪怕係 renew 好。咁如果你8、9月到期嘅話，你嘅嗌價能力都會比一般月份高。咁所以大家就要自己設計自己嗰張租約同埋個 break clause 係幾時，因為其實逢親租約都有 break clause 嘅，有可能6+2啊，或者10+2啊，通常都係咁樣，會比較多。咁所以大家一定要自己設計好嗰個你可以 call 個 break 嗰個月份。咁如果我啱先我 break 咗6月，咁你可能你 renew 個 rate 都唔會特別靚，因為6月唔係 hot season， 係即係7月尾8、9月就真係 hot season。所以大家真係要用啲心機去幫自己同你嗰個地產代理去傾，個租賃代理去傾點樣設計你張租約。作為業主，絕對有 say 去幫自己去設計嘅，唔係所有嘢都係英國嘅本地地產代理佢話乜就乜嘅，你絕對有權去問佢點解可唔可以咁樣做，多貨比三家。我相信呢個會令到你個租金回報更加會好。Yep.
Okay, so I mean, just to sort of look ahead now for what we expect to see over the remainder of the year and sort of moving forwards. Look, it's predicted that supply certainly from now to the end of the year will remain low. Like I say, the renewal figures there sort of speak for themselves in terms of tenants who are in situ to remain. And already we are seeing the supply come out of the market. We're on the 7th of September, and typically by the end of September, a lot of the supply will have gone. Tenants will have found properties ready to move into, ahead of starting their new jobs or starting their new academic year. So that would suggest that. We've already touched on the students sort of coming back, and I think that market will be busy for another month, and then again we'll see that die down. And another thing I should just touch on, which you may or may not have heard of, is build to rent. Are you familiar with that, Antonio?
Yes.
Yeah.
I just have one question. Is the build to rent, the tenant should have should he meet the certain criteria so that he can move in those sometimes subsidized? Is it subsidized?
Not necessarily. So with build to rent, what that is, rather than a private landlord, so like
Okay.
me or you owning a property, is institutional landlord, and the cost of renting these properties is typically higher, but the standard of living is better. So often these buildings will have a lot of facilities. They'll have on-site maintenance team that will guarantee maintenance works to be fixed in say 24 to 48 hours, and they'll have an on-site manager. And
so if you say they have the lots of facility, means the rental lot low.
So it's a higher rental probably for what you
say
get.
there's a lot of 24 concierge.
Yeah.
It's only the luxury apartment could have 24 hours concierge.
Not necessarily luxury concierge, but what I mean is it's sort of they have like on-house maintenance team, so they'll fix the properties and what have you. And this is this is becoming a very popular form of renting rather than renting from a private.
It's the young professional love these kinds of build to rent building with lots of facilities, maintenance services. But will this erode the market for those previously letting for houses?
Yeah.
For those houses in London.
So these are for flats normally.
We take these competitors to take out those tenants from previously lived in houses, and they will move in this kind of a build to rent.
That's right.
Developments.
Right. Yeah, that's right. So we're seeing. I mean, we've been working on a few schemes ourselves, and typically it's young professionals that would want to live there, and I think it's just a slightly different way of living, and there's a bit more of a community feel, or they try to have a bit more community feel within the buildings, have like social events and whatnot. It's just a slightly different way of living, and certainly a different way of renting. And actually, it's just bringing the standard of renting.
其實阿 James 都帶出幾大嘅重點，就係話其實佢預期嗰個供應都會低，嗰個 demand 都會係繼續高。咁所以即係呢個係第一個佢嘅 insights 啦。第二個話都會好多國際學生翻嚟，咁呢個係我哋都見到都好多國際學生真係翻嚟。因為今年嘅英國嘅大學嘅收生率係好高，今年競爭大嘅。今年翻嚟啲因為今年好多A level 畢業嘅學生去揾學校都冇往年咁容易，係今年辛苦咗。咁第三，大家要留意頭先阿 James 講就話多咗啲 人要求個生活個水準高咗，啲租客佢要個設施，佢要個大廈裏面嘅個小區有設施要靚嘅，有管理嘅，有 concierge 嘅，有 facilities 嘅。咁同以往去租間 house 或者租啲比較簡單啲嘅細嘅 development 裏邊冇 facilities 嘅，呢個反而而家嘅新嘅租客咧係有呢個要求。咁所以大家去買樓投資收租嗰時咧，其實發現有啲會貴，點解咁貴咧？因為有好多 facilities， 有啲咁平，因為佢乜都 facility 都冇。其實喺個 buy to let 情況下邊咧，如果你自用冇所謂，因為自用我唔介意，我個小區乜都冇。但係如果喺出租情況下邊咧，而家啲本身啲young professional 咧，都係偏向租啲有 facilities、有 landscape、有管理嘅大型屋苑。我諗呢個同香港都係接近。因為 I just share the how the tenant, the young professional love to go to those development with better maintenance, better landscape gardens, facilities. This is the trend.
That's right. And just to sort of summarize, obviously what we've spoken about today, the rental market at the moment is very positive across the whole of London. Obviously, there's a lot going on in the UK at the moment. We've just had a new Prime Minister, and there's various other factors that may affect the buy-to-let market and the rental market. I don't have a crystal ball, so I don't know exactly how it's going to play out.
No crystal ball.
I think people would be lying if they told you they did. So just I guess a slide on a bit of caution, perhaps. Obviously, the increased interest rates for landlords at the moment, and we were chatting about it before. Actually, the way the rents have increased so significantly in
yes, if the landlord can give a year-on-year growth of 30%, the interest rate hike can be overcome, being compensated.
Exactly. So at the moment for landlords, it's okay because most of the owners are finding that their rental increase is outweighing their mortgage increase, for example. But who knows if the rates will raise higher, and then that could become an issue. Or if the rental market was to take a slight dip, then the margins for landlords it may suffer, and ultimately a lot of these
其實我哋本身啲客戶咧都係 buy to let 為主，我啲客戶其實佢都有個 belief 咧，就話：喂，我既然俾銀行加咗我嘅利息，點解我唔加翻租客租金咧？大家都做個 experiment， 咁其實發覺喺8、9月做咧，結果個 experiment 係講有30% growth in 啲 figures 睇出嚟嚇，咁啊，你當 James share 係真係 OK， 咁所以其實大家俾人加息嘅話咧，喺英國個倫敦市場咧都係偏向即係加翻個租客嘅啫。咁幾時會去到嗰個位會 breaking point 咧？大家嚟知我哋都冇 crystal ball， 但係起碼而家暫時我見到我哋喺加租情況下邊咧，啲租客都係會接受。咁所以我俾人加息，因為貸款利息高咗，我都可以邊 compensate。咁所以呢個都係 mitigate 到嘅一件事。
You should also mention the less tax benefits in sort of in line with that really, and then how it may affect the landlords or the owners' bottom line, I guess. So look, just on another point there, the cost of living crisis and potential recession. I know that you had a slide before on how Liz Truss is going to freeze the energy costs, which is obviously news welcome to a lot of people. But the cost of everything, like goods such as food, etc. That's going to have a big effect on tenants. Can tenants will their salaries increase in line with that, and can they afford these high rents? So they're just factors that we sort of need to think about. And if there is a recession, for the loss of jobs, that could mean a smaller pool of tenants who could potentially meet the rental demands of London, because London compared to the rest of the country, the rent is just so much higher. In general.
其實 James 都有講啦，其實即係大家要注意翻，而家其實嗰個 living costs 個 prices， 因為嗰個生活成本高咗咁多啦，有機會可能會英國經濟會衰退啦，咁令到有啲人佢嗰個收入會低咗啊，或者佢個份工會冇咗情況下邊係咪會少咗啲租客咧？呢個大家都要注意嘅。但係喺 COVID 嘅管理下邊咧，我哋見到英國政府都上一次都叫 manage 到，咁今次再 under 喺卓慧思嘅帶領下邊係咪再 manage 咗咧？我哋拭目以待啦。咁當然呢個大家都要注意翻，但係其實見到英國嗰個倫敦個經濟同倫敦嘅外圍經濟咧係兩個唔同嘅經濟體啦。我哋自己成日覺得即係 London 同outside London係兩件事啦。咁所以London 嘅話，始終入到嚟呢個門檻都係高啲嘅。 咁所以大家拭目以待，係咪即係嗰個影響係咁大啦？希望嗰個 energy bill 可以令到嗰個大家嗰個生活成本冇上升得咁誇張嘅話，嗰個家庭收入都唔會細大影響情況下邊咧，仲可以繼續去消費，去繼續有工作啦。就
Thank you. And then, yeah, just the final point. Everyone's favorite is compliance.
Yeah,
not mine. But no, look, just I think what's really important if you are about to enter the buy-to-let market is just to understand, you know, the amount of compliance that is required now for properties. There's over 200 pieces of legislation in the rental sector. You know, you need various things from energy performance certificates, electrical checks, carbon monoxide checks, licenses, etc. these days. And
yes, it's actually increase the cost for the landlord, but it differentiate for those new build to be much more easier to pass those tests when compared to those 40 years houses. Is it correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So with a lot of the compliance, when you purchase a new build property, that will have most of the certificate, the relevant certificates anyway. Whereas if it's a property that's say 10, 15 years old, you know, you may have to think about that. Licensing is a big thing. So it's different for each borough in London, and a lot of properties now need licenses if you want to rent the property out. Depending on what type.
所以大家真係要注意，而家你英國做業主嘅話，倫敦做業主嘅話咧，係多咗好多新嘅法例咧，令到你要去符合好多標籤，即係能源標籤、gas、electrical， 所有包括即係碳排放，所有嘢。包括你出租嗰個 licensing， 全部每個 borough 咧都追得你好緊。咁其實有好變頭先同阿 James 傾就話，如果你本身係買新樓嘅話咧，其實已經減低咗好多呢啲問題啦。好多二手啦或者啲 houses 嘅話喺倫敦咧，好多都唔達標嘅。咁變咗你要好做好多改造工程啊，或者要可能啲嘢改造唔到，可能即係嗰個有啲令到有啲嘢即係要或者要好多成本去改造啊。咁所以呢個都大家要即係買一手樓、二手樓投資時要自己要去注意咯。
Thank you. And then, yeah, look, so thanks for listening to my presentation on the market itself. Just a little bit of information about who we are or who I am. Like I say, I've managed some of our central London offices now for 6 years. So Life Residential as a whole, we've been operating since 2000. We like I say, we manage about 4,500 properties across London. Slightly different to some estate agents in the sense that we are actually owned by 2 developers, Galliard Homes in the City and Docklands. So the business model, we're very much reliant on new build properties, and we are sort of specialists in that sector. We've got offices in London, 8 offices in London. We've just set up an office in Birmingham because there's a lot of investment going on there, as I'm sure you're probably well aware. We've got offices in Hong Kong and Singapore, with a high proportion of our clients being based overseas. We've got offices out there to help with service levels and whatnot. I guess.
OK 嗱 ，Life Residential 就係一間喺 Galliard 一間發展商叫 Galliard， 大家都聽過喺英國本地發展商嘅屬下嘅一間租賃公司。租務公司啦，佢哋喺倫敦 base 啦 ，Birmingham 有公司啦，管理超過4500個 apartments 啦，佢哋香港有 office， 新加坡都有 office 啦，咁呢個係個即係亦都係我哋其中一個好嘅合作伙伴啦。咁所以大家如果將來有需要做租賃管理嘅話咧，可以透過我哋去聯絡 Live 啦。咁呢個亦都係我哋嘅其中一個好主要工作，幫大家去點樣透過嗰個租務管理去提升你嘅租金回報，以達至你可以攞到更加高嘅 capital gain。呢個係我哋終極 buy to let 成日作為 investor 嘅終極就係我要喺 capital gain 度賺錢。咁點樣 capital 賺錢咧？就要透過你嘅租金上升嚟令到 capital gain 賺錢啦。咁所以呢個 proposition always true。我希望大家即係可以今日呢個 section 同大家分享今晚點樣去將個租金提升咧。其實就係幾個 key take away。第一就真係要好好管理翻你嗰個幾時去 renew 嗰個租約個時間係非常之重要。似乎就係阿 James 俾我哋 tips 係7、8、9，唔好遲過10月嘅上旬啊！呢個係第二就要揾一間 letting agency， 佢願意幫你去做呢啲 dirty work 嘅，因為呢啲講真同個租客佢拗嚟拗去咧都係辛苦嘢。咁要揾間好我叫 polite 啲嘅，或者肯願意幫你去糾纏嘅一啲行啦，當然亦都係中大型行啦。咁第三就真係要去時時去睇翻自己嘅 portfolio， 究竟買 one better、two better、three better 定 studio 咧？呢個係一個好一個 portfolio build up 嘅情況下邊去決定你去買啲乜嘢投資。頭先有啲數據話俾你聽，邊個地區邊個租金個 demand 好，但係呢啲全部都 dynamic 嘅，隨住時間去喐嘅話，佢都會喐嘅。咁所以多啲去溝通，歡迎大家多啲去揾我哋嘅 consultants 去了解翻倫敦即時嘅情況。咁
Okay, and then there's just the branch network. So that just shows the 8 London offices.
Yeah, you have 8 offices in London.
8 offices across London now. So we do cover the whole of London. So some of these offices have bigger.
You cover the core area, key area.
Yeah. All the key areas, and now Birmingham as well. As of this year.
Yeah.
There's like I mentioned, there's a lot of development there. And
so James, what will be your focus in taking care of the regions in London?
So you mean my area?
Yeah.
So if so I'm mainly based in, well, we used to have an office in Westminster, which I used to run, and then we merged that with an office in Nine Elms. So I'm covering Westminster, Nine Elms, sort of Covent Garden, so all of central London, really from our location, and Nine Elms, because obviously the development in Nine Elms is massive. Is massive really. So that would be the locations there.
Okay, thank you very much. 今日多謝大家。今日我哋嘅節目咧，咁今日好歡迎，多謝翻阿 James 啦。Thank you so much, James, for your good sharing.
Thank you very much.
The figures are very amazing. These are first hand, real time. This is very good food to our audience. Thank you so much today. Okay, 咁今日多謝大家嘅節目。咁下週3同大家見，就會同大家眼力高會同大家去走訪呢個 City Fringe 呢個新項目，亦都可以睇翻究竟 City Fringe 嘅投資價值。咁下週3見，OK，再見，拜拜。